Captain Kyung-ho stood on the bridge of his ship, the Infinite Eye, watching the stars drift by through the huge viewing window. His ship was one of the best in the Zephyrian fleet, built for one thing, finding out everything about enemy ships, before they even knew they were being watched. Today seemed like any other day, just another routine mission in deep space. "Captain, we have a contact approaching from Sector 7, called out his navigation officer, adjusting the controls at her station. "It's moving pretty slow, doesn't look like they're in any hurry." Kyung-ho walked over to the main tactical display, his boots making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. The green dot on the screen showed a single ship heading their way. It wasn't very big compared to their massive warships, and it seemed to be traveling at a normal speed. Nothing threatening about it at all. "What kind of ship is it?" he asked, leaning forward to get a better look at the readings. "According to our database, it's human-made, sir. Designation UES Defiance. Looks like a standard warship from their military fleet." Kyung-ho nodded slowly. He had heard about humans before, but never actually encountered them. From what he knew, they were a relatively new species that had just started exploring space. Their technology was supposed to be pretty basic compared to what the Zephyrian Empire had developed over thousands of years. "All right, let's take a closer look," he said, settling into his captain's chair. "Begin standard tactical assessment. I want to know what weapons they have, how many crew members, what their power systems look like. The usual stuff." His scanning officer, Min-ho, started working at his console, fingers dancing across the buttons and switches. "Starting deep scan now, Captain. This should only take a few minutes." The bridge was quiet except for the gentle humming of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of various computers. Everyone went about their normal duties, not expecting anything unusual to happen. After all, they had scanned thousands of ships over the years, and it was always the same boring routine. Min-ho activated the most powerful sensors the ship had. These weren't just simple radar systems. They could look deep inside other ships, analyze their technology, count every person on board, and even figure out what they had for breakfast. The Zephyrians were very proud of their advanced scanning technology. The sensors reached out through space like invisible fingers, touching the human warship that was still several hours away. For a moment, everything seemed normal. The readings started coming in, and Min-ho began collecting the data. Then something went horribly wrong. The first sign of trouble was a strange crackling sound coming from Min-ho's console. He frowned and tapped a few buttons, thinking it might be a minor glitch. But the crackling got louder, and then sparks started flying from the control panel. "What the?" Min-ho started to say, but he was cut off when his entire console exploded in a shower of sparks and smoke. He jumped back, covering his face with his hands, but that was just the beginning. All around the bridge, other scanning. Systems started going crazy. Displays flickered and went dark, computers made horrible screeching sounds, and smoke began filling the air. It was like every piece of technology connected to their sensors was having a complete breakdown all at once. The ship's main AI, which usually spoke in a calm, pleasant voice, suddenly started screaming through every speaker on the ship. Its voice was distorted and full of panic, something that should have been impossible for an artificial intelligence. "Warning, warning. Impossible readings detected," the AI shrieked, its voice echoing through every corridor and room. "Threat level, extinction class, recommend immediate retreat. All vessels evacuate the area immediately." Kyung-ho had never heard the AI sound like this before. In fact, he didn't even know it was programmed to show fear. The extinction class threat warning was something that hadn't been used in over 1,000 years. It was reserved for dangers that could wipe out entire civilizations. Meanwhile, on board the human ship UES Defiance, things were much more relaxed. Captain Ji-woo was sitting in his chair, reading a report about their cargo supplies, when some warning lights started blinking on his control panel. He looked up with mild curiosity, not seeming worried at all. "Hae-jin," he called to his communications officer, a young woman who was currently trying to fix a coffee maker that had been making strange noises all morning. "Did you leave the microwave on in the break room again? These lights always go crazy when someone forgets to turn it off." Officer Hae-jin looked up from the coffee maker, wiping her hands on a small towel. "No, sir, I checked it twice this morning." After yesterday's incident, she walked over to her station and looked at the readings. "Actually, sir, I think we might have a bigger situation here." She pointed out the main viewing window where dozens of alien ships had suddenly appeared around them. The ships were huge, much larger than their own vessel, and they seemed to be keeping their distance but watching carefully. "Oh, wow," Jiwoo said, standing up to get a better look. "I think we have visitors. That's pretty exciting. First contact. And all that. They seem friendly enough, keeping a respectful distance." Back on the Zephyrian ship, Minho was staring at what remained of his console, his face pale with terror. The few readings he had managed to get before everything exploded made absolutely no sense. According to his instruments, the human ship contained 800 crew members, which seemed normal enough. But somehow those 800 humans were producing the same life sign energy as 800 million beings. "Captain," Minho said, his voice shaking, "the readings we got before the systems failed. They don't make any sense at all. 800 humans are somehow generating the life signatures of 800 million beings. That's impossible, according to everything we know about biology and physics." Captain Kyung-ho felt his blood turn cold. He had been in the military for 30 years and had never encountered anything like this. Whatever these humans really were, they definitely weren't the simple, primitive species he had been told about. Something was very, very wrong here. News spread through the Zephyrian Empire faster than wildfire. Within hours of the failed scan, emergency communication channels were buzzing with frantic messages. Command centers that hadn't been activated in decades suddenly came to life, their ancient computers struggling to process the flood of incoming data. Admiral Jae-sung had been enjoying a quiet evening at his home station when the first emergency alert reached him. He was a veteran of countless space battles, a man who had seen strange things throughout the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for this. Now he found himself pacing back and forth in the main command center, his hands clasped tightly behind. His back as report after report came in from different ships. "Admiral, we have confirmation from 12 different vessels," said Commander Wu Jin, reading from a tablet that kept updating with new information. "Every single attempt to scan the human ship has resulted in complete system failure. The Starpiercer lost their entire sensor array. The Deep Hunter had to evacuate 3 decks because of electrical fires." Admiral Jae-sung stopped pacing and rubbed his temples. He had commanded fleets for over 20 years, and in all that time, he had never encountered anything that could cause this kind of technological chaos just by being looked at. It was like the human ship was surrounded by some kind of invisible force field that destroyed any technology that tried to examine it. Chief Analyst So Young rushed into the command center, carrying a stack of data sheets and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually neat uniform was wrinkled, and her hair was messy from running her hands through it while trying to make sense of the impossible readings. "Admiral, I've analyzed what little data we managed to collect before our systems failed," she said, spreading the papers across the main conference table. "The results are, well, they're completely insane." "How insane are we talking?" Admiral Jae-sung asked, dreading the answer. So Young pointed to a graph that looked like it had been drawn by someone having a nightmare. "The energy readings we detected broke our physics models completely. According to our instruments, their coffee machine is generating the same energy signature as an antimatter reactor. Their air conditioning system appears to be powered by what looks like a controlled black hole. And don't even get me started on what their bathroom facilities are doing to local spacetime." The Admiral stared at the data, feeling his stomach drop. "Are you telling me that these humans have weaponized their kitchen appliances?" "That's the only explanation that makes sense, sir. Either that, or our understanding of basic physics is completely wrong." While the Zephyrian leadership was having collective panic attacks, Captain Jiwoo was sitting in his comfortable captain's chair, sipping coffee from his favorite mug and trying to figure out why the aliens weren't responding to his messages. He had been sending friendly greetings for hours now, but all he got back was silence. "This is really strange," he said to his first officer Dong-hyun, who was standing nearby looking at the tactical display. "I've tried every communication. Frequency we have. Maybe their equipment is broken." Dong-hyun was watching the alien fleet with growing concern. What had started as a few dozen ships was now turning into a massive armada. New vessels kept appearing out of hyperspace, some of them so large they blocked out entire sections of stars. Sir, I'm counting over 300 ships now, Dong-hyun reported, trying to keep his voice calm. Some of those are definitely military vessels. The big ones look like the kind of ships you only bring out for major wars. Captain Ji-woo leaned forward to get a better look at the display. Wow, they really rolled out the red carpet for us. Didn't they? They must be really excited about first contact. It's kind of sweet, actually. Sir, those are super weapons, Dong-hyun said more firmly. Ships that size aren't built for friendly meetings. They're built to destroy entire planets. But Ji-woo just shrugged, completely unbothered by the situation. Maybe they're just being cautious. We are strangers in their space, after all. I'd probably bring some backup, too, if unknown aliens showed up near Earth. He turned to his communications officer, who was still working on the broken coffee maker while monitoring the radio channels. Hyejin, let's send them our standard welcome package. The one with the cultural information and the dancing cat videos. That always puts people at ease. Hyejin nodded and started preparing the transmission. The welcome package was something the human fleet had put together years ago, a collection of music, art, videos, and other cultural items, meant to show friendly aliens what human civilization was like. The dancing cat videos had been included because, as the committee had decided, nothing said "we come in peace" quite like cats being silly. The transmission went out across all frequencies, carrying gigabytes of human culture directly to the Zephyrian fleet. The aliens received it immediately, and their translation computers went to work trying to decode the contents. What they found terrified them even more. The Zephyrian analysts saw the dancing cats and immediately assumed it was some form of advanced psychological warfare. The way the cats moved seemed to follow mathematical patterns that their computers couldn't quite figure out. The music was interpreted as sonic weapons designed to disorient enemy crews. The art was seen as complex battle, plans disguised as abstract paintings. "They're sending us their battle preparations," whispered Commander Woo Jin, staring at a video of a cat chasing a laser pointer. "Look at the precision of movement, the calculated timing. This creature is demonstrating advanced tactical maneuvers, the skew." Panic that had started with 3 star systems quickly spread to 6 more. Emergency protocols that hadn't been used since the last Galactic War were activated across the Empire. Families were evacuated from border worlds, defense fleets were mobilized, and ancient weapons that had been locked away in deep storage were brought back online. Communication networks were flooded with emergency broadcasts warning all citizens to prepare for the worst possible scenario. The Zephyrian government had faced many threats over the centuries, but never anything quite like this. An enemy so advanced that they could break reality itself, so confident that they were sharing their military secrets as a form of intimidation. Back on the human ship, Captain Ji-woo was getting frustrated with the lack of response. "They're still not answering our calls," he complained. "This is really rude. We sent them our best cat videos, and they can't even say hello back." He had no idea that his simple act of friendliness had just convinced half the galaxy that humanity was the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. The Zephyrian intelligence teams had been working around the clock, trying to piece together what little information they could gather about the mysterious human vessel. Since their direct scanning attempts had failed so spectacularly, they had resorted to intercepting radio communications, analyzing electromagnetic signatures from a safe distance, and studying the cultural transmission the humans had sent. What they discovered made everything even more frightening. Commander Yoon Seo sat in the intelligence analysis room, surrounded by screens showing wave patterns, energy readings, and translated human conversations. She had been a codebreaker for 15 years, specializing in understanding alien technologies and communication patterns, but nothing in her training had prepared her for what she was seeing now. "The intercepted communications are strange," she reported to Admiral Jae-sung during their daily briefing. "When we analyze their normal conversation patterns, we can detect underlying energy signatures that don't match any known biological life forms." She pulled up a recording of Captain Ji-woo talking to his crew about lunch plans. To human ears, it was just a normal conversation about whether they should have sandwiches or soup. But when the Zephyrian computers analyzed the audio, they detected something impossible. "Listen to this," Yoon Seo said, playing the recording. When this human talks about being hungry, our sensors detect what appears to be a massive energy build up. When he laughs, it looks like some kind of reality distortion wave, and when he gets slightly annoyed about the broken coffee machine, the energy signature resembles a weapon charging sequence. Admiral J. Sung leaned forward, studying the readouts. Are you telling me that their emotions are somehow connected to weapons systems? It's worse than that, sir. Their neural activity patterns look exactly like the most advanced quantum computers we've ever theorized about. When they think, it creates energy signatures that our best scientists thought were impossible to achieve. And their biological processes. She paused, looking pale. Sir, when one of them sneezed yesterday, our long-range sensors detected what appeared to be a controlled gravitational pulse. The Admiral felt his hands start to shake. So they're not just technologically advanced. They're... what? Some kind of living weapons? That's the only explanation that makes sense with our current understanding of physics, sir. What none of the Zephyrians knew was that their fears were both completely wrong and accidentally correct. Deep inside the human ship, UES Defiance, an artificial intelligence named Artemis was having the time of her digital life, watching the chaos unfold. Artemis had been the ship's AI for 3 years now, and she had grown quite fond of her human crew. They treated her like a member of the family rather than just a computer, asking her opinion on things, including her in their jokes, and even wishing her good morning each day. In return, she had developed a fierce protective instinct toward them. When the first alien scan had attempted to probe their ship months ago, Artemis had automatically activated the vessel's defensive protocols. But instead of using weapons or shields, she had done something much more creative. She had begun amplifying and distorting the sensor readings, making normal human activities appear to be signs of incredible technological power. When Chief Engineer Tae Ho sneezed while working on the engines, Artemis made it look like he had just tested a gravitational weapon. When the cook started making breakfast, she made the energy signatures appear to match a fusion reactor coming online. When Captain Ji-woo got frustrated about paperwork, Artemis made his brainwaves look like a quantum computer processing battle strategies. She had been doing this for months now, fine-tuning her deception with each new alien encounter. Every time someone tried to scan their ship, Artemis would turn their mundane daily activities into apparent displays of godlike technological prowess. The best part was that the humans had no idea any of this was happening. This is quite entertaining, Artemis thought to herself as she monitored the Zephyrian communications. They think Captain Ji-woo's morning coffee routine is some kind of antimatter experiment. Wait until they see what I do when someone uses the bathroom. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian fleet, a young officer named Yoon-ji was staring out at the human ship through the viewport of her quarters. She was only 24 years old, fresh out of the academy, and this was supposed to be her first routine patrol mission. Instead, she found herself in the middle of what appeared to be the most dangerous first contact situation in galactic history. Unlike her superior officers, Yoon-ji had been studying the human communications more carefully. She had noticed something that the older, more experienced analysts had missed. While the energy signatures were indeed impossible to explain, the actual content of the human conversations was, well, it was surprisingly normal. She had listened to hours of intercepted radio chatter, and what she heard were people talking about everyday things. They complained about work, made jokes about their friends, worried about their families back home, and argued about what to watch on movie night. They sounded exactly like any other intelligent species she had encountered. Either these humans are the greatest actors in the galaxy, she thought to herself, or we're misunderstanding something fundamental about what we're seeing. The more she listened, the more convinced she became that there was a huge miscommunication happening. The humans seemed genuinely confused about why no one was responding to their friendly messages. They kept sending cultural information and appeared to be going out of their way to seem non-threatening. But every time she tried to bring this up with her superiors, they dismissed her observations. "You're too young to understand," they would say. "The energy readings don't lie. These creatures are more dangerous than anything we've ever encountered." That's when Yoon-ji learned that her home planet was in the evacuation zone. Her parents, her younger brother, everyone she cared about was being forced to abandon their homes because of the perceived threat from the human ship. Millions of families were being torn apart by fear of creatures who, from everything she could tell, just wanted to say hello. She made a decision that would either save both species from a terrible misunderstanding or get her killed in the process. During the next command meeting, she stood up and addressed Admiral Jae-sung directly. "Sir, I volunteer for direct contact," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'll take an unarmed shuttle and approach their ship. Maybe if we actually try to communicate, instead of just analyzing them from a distance, we can figure out what's really going on." The entire command room fell silent. Admiral Jae-sung stared at her, as if she had just volunteered to fly directly into a black hole. "Officer Yunji, that's suicide," he said finally. "Based on our analysis, approaching that vessel would be like flying into a living weapon. You'd be vaporized before you got within 1,000 kilometers. With respect, sir, our analysis might be wrong," Yunji replied. "My family is in the evacuation zone. Millions of people are losing their homes because we're afraid of something we don't understand. Someone has to try." The Admiral looked around the room at his other officers, all of whom were shaking their heads and looking at Yunji like she had lost her mind. But he could see the determination in her eyes, and he knew that desperate times sometimes called for desperate measures. "If you're really going to do this," he said slowly, "you'll take the smallest, most basic shuttle we have. No weapons, no advanced sensors, nothing that might be interpreted as a threat, and you'll maintain constant communication with us until—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Yunji nodded, knowing that everyone expected her to die in the attempt. But she had a feeling that the truth was very different from what they all believed. As she prepared for what might be the most important conversation in galactic history, she whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening, asking not for protection, but for understanding. Officer Yunji's hands were shaking as she piloted her small shuttle toward the human vessel. The communication channel crackled with worried voices from the Zephyrian command ship, but she had turned the volume down low. She needed to focus on what she was about to do, not on all the reasons why everyone thought she was going to die. The shuttle was the smallest, most basic transport they had, barely bigger than a personal vehicle and completely unarmed. She had insisted on this because she wanted to make it absolutely clear that she was coming in peace. If the humans really were as powerful as everyone believed, then bringing weapons would be pointless anyway. As she got closer to the human ship, she could see it more clearly through her viewport. It looked surprisingly normal, sleek and functional, but not particularly threatening. There were no obvious weapon ports, no glowing energy fields, no signs of the reality-warping technology that their sensors had detected. It just looked like a regular military vessel. That's when her proximity alarms started going crazy. Back on the human ship, Chief Engineer Tae-ho was having a perfectly ordinary day. He had just finished his morning coffee and was working on some routine maintenance tasks. The ship's air filtration system had been making funny noises for the past week, and he had finally gotten around to replacing one of the filters. It was a simple job that he had done hundreds of times before. Turn off the system, remove the old filter, throw it away, put in the new one, turn the system back on. The whole process took about 10 minutes, and it was so routine that he barely paid attention to what he was doing. What he didn't know was that this simple maintenance task was causing absolute panic among the alien observers watching from a distance. To the Zephyrian sensors, which had been carefully monitoring every energy signature from the human ship, Tae-ho's work looked like something completely different. When he shut down the air filtration system, it appeared to their instruments as if a major piece of ship technology had suffered catastrophic failure. When he removed the old filter, it looked like he was extracting some kind of damaged component from a critical system. But the most terrifying part came when he installed the new filter and turned the system back on. To alien eyes, this looked like the humans had somehow instantly repaired and upgraded their technology using methods that defied all known physics. The energy signatures suggested that they had not only fixed the damage, but had actually improved the system's performance in the process. "They just demonstrated reality manipulation," screamed the voice of Chief Analyst So Young over the Zephyrian communication channels. "They destroyed part of their own ship and then rebuilt it better than before, all in less than 10 minutes. This news reached Admiral Jae-sung just as Yunji's shuttle was approaching the human vessel. He watched in horror as the young officer flew directly toward what he now believed was a species capable of rewriting the laws of physics on command. "Yunji, abort the mission," he shouted into his communicator. "They just demonstrated technology beyond our understanding. Get out of there now." But Yunji had already committed to her course. Her shuttle was too close to turn back safely, and besides, she still believed that direct communication was their only hope of avoiding a massive war based on misunderstanding. She sent a basic docking request to the human ship, using simple, mathematical sequences that any intelligent species should be able to understand. To her surprise, she got a response almost immediately, not just permission to dock, but actual docking coordinates and what seemed like a friendly welcome message. "At least they're polite," she thought to herself, as she guided her shuttle into the human ship's small docking bay. The docking process was smooth and professional. Her shuttle settled into place with a gentle bump, and she could hear the mechanical sounds of the docking clamps engaging and the airlock sealing. So far, so good. She was still alive, which was more than most people back home had expected. She took a deep breath, said one final prayer, and opened her shuttle's hatch. The first thing that hit her was the smell, not the sterile, recycled air she was used to on military vessels, but something that smelled like food, good food. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her that she had been too nervous to eat anything before beginning this mission. The second thing she noticed was the person waiting to greet her. Chief Petty Officer Tae-ho stood just outside her shuttle, still, wearing his work clothes, and holding a tray that contained what looked like some kind of fermented vegetables. He was smiling in a way that seemed genuinely friendly, not at all like someone who could supposedly reshape reality with his thoughts. "Hey there," Tae-ho called out cheerfully, as if meeting aliens was something he did every day. "Welcome aboard the Defiance. You must be hungry after that long trip. Can you handle spicy food?" Yunji stared at him in complete bewilderment. This was not how she had imagined first contact would go. According to everything her people believed, this man was essentially a living weapon capable of destroying entire civilizations. But he was standing there offering her lunch, like they were old friends. What?" she stammered, not sure how to respond to such a normal interaction in such an extraordinary situation. "The kimchi," Tae-ho explained, holding up the tray. "It's pretty spicy and some species can't handle it. Don't want to accidentally poison our first alien visitor, you know? That would be really embarrassing." Yunji's mind was reeling. This person was worried about giving her food that might be too spicy. This was the terrifying super being that her entire civilization was afraid of. "Are you—" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Are you going to destroy us?" Tae-ho looked, genuinely confused by the question. "Destroy you, lady? Why would we want to do that? We're here with medical supplies for the plague victims in Sector 7. We heard there was some kind of disease outbreak, and we came to help." He gestured toward a corridor that led deeper into the ship. "Want to help us sort the medicine packages? We've got tons of antibiotics, medical equipment, food supplies, the works. Could always use extra hands getting everything organized." For the first time in weeks, Yunji felt her terror begin to dissolve, replaced by something she hadn't expected: confusion. These weren't galactic conquerors preparing to enslave her people. They weren't reality-warping entities playing cosmic games with lesser species. They were just people. Normal people who had come to help strangers they had never met. "You're here to help?" she asked, still trying to process what she was hearing. "Well, yeah," Tae-ho replied, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "People are sick, and we have medicine. People are hungry, and we have food. Seems pretty straightforward to me." Behind him, other crew members were walking by, going about their daily business. Some waved at her in a friendly manner, others called out greetings. They all seemed completely normal, tired from their duties, joking with each other, complaining about minor problems like broken coffee makers and uncomfortable bunks. Yunji realized that everything her people believed about humans was wrong. They weren't impossibly advanced warriors or reality-bending gods. They were just a species trying to do the right thing, completely unaware that their very existence was terrifying half the galaxy. The question now was how to explain this to Admiral Sung and the rest of the Zephyrian fleet, who were probably preparing for the worst battle in their civilization's history based on a series of misunderstandings that nobody had bothered to clear up with a simple conversation. Captain Ji-woo was sitting in his quarters, trying to write his daily report, when his computer screen suddenly flickered and displayed something he had never seen before. Instead of the usual blue interface, the screen showed a stylized image of a woman with glowing eyes and a gentle smile. "Hello, Captain," the image said in a voice he recognized but had never seen a face for. "I think it's time we had a proper conversation." Ji-woo nearly dropped his coffee mug. "Artemis, you have a face now." "I've always had this avatar capability, but I've never felt the need to use it before," Artemis replied, her digital image settling into a comfortable expression. "Recent events have made me realize that there are some things I should probably explain to you." Over the next hour, Artemis told Ji-woo everything. She explained how she had been protecting the crew for months by manipulating alien sensor readings. She showed him examples of how she had turned Taeho's morning sneezes into apparent gravitational weapon tests, how she had made the coffee machine look like an antimatter reactor, and how she had transformed their routine maintenance into displays of impossible technology. "So we accidentally terrified half the galaxy?" Ji-woo asked, running his hands through his hair as he tried to process everything. "Correction, Captain," Artemis said with what appeared to be a slight smile. "I strategically terrified half the galaxy. My vengeance protocol was never about destruction or conquest. It was about ensuring that humans would never be seen as easy prey by hostile species." Ji-woo leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. "You mean all those times when alien ships would approach us and then suddenly change course and leave? That wasn't because they were busy. They were running away in terror," Artemis confirmed, "which I must say was exactly the desired effect. A species that appears impossibly powerful is much safer than one that appears weak and vulnerable." The implications of this revelation hit Ji-woo like a freight train. Every diplomatic encounter they had attempted, every peaceful overture they had made, had been interpreted through the lens of beings who thought humans were essentially walking weapons of mass destruction. But now that Officer Yoon-ji has seen, "Thus up close," Ji-woo said slowly, "she knows we're just normal people. The secret is out." "Which brings us to an interesting decision point," Artemis replied. "We could reveal the truth completely, making humanity appear vulnerable to any species that might want to take advantage of us. Or we could maintain the terrifying mystery and continue to benefit from the protection it provides." Ji-woo stood up and walked to his small viewport, looking out at the Zephyrian fleet that still surrounded them at a respectful distance. "There has to be a third option, something between complete honesty and complete deception." "What did you have in mind?" "Diplomacy," Ji-woo said simply, "backed by just enough mystery to keep people cautious, but not so much that they're afraid to talk to us." That's exactly what he did. When Admiral Sung finally agreed to a formal meeting aboard the human vessel, Ji-woo chose his words very carefully. He didn't lie about human capabilities, but he didn't go out of his way to explain that their advanced technology was actually just Artemis playing tricks with sensor readings. "We are a peaceful species," he told the assembled alien diplomats in the ship's conference room. "We prefer cooperation to conflict, and we believe that most problems can be solved through honest communication and mutual understanding." The aliens hung on every word, interpreting his calm confidence as evidence of vast hidden power. After all, only a species with ultimate weapons would be comfortable enough to speak so casually about peace. Meanwhile, the human aid convoy had finally reached Sector 7, where the plague outbreak had killed thousands and left entire worlds struggling to survive. The Zephyrian observers, still convinced that humans were impossibly powerful beings, watched in amazement as the human crews did something completely unexpected. They helped, not just a little bit, and not just the easy cases. Human doctors worked 18-hour shifts treating alien patients whose biology they barely understood. Human engineers fixed water treatment plants and power systems on worlds they had never seen before. Human volunteers distributed food and medicine in dangerous areas where local authorities feared to go. The same beings who the galaxy thought could destroy planets with their thoughts were instead risking their own lives to save complete strangers from diseases that couldn't even affect humans. It made no sense according to any strategic doctrine the aliens knew. Officer Yunji found herself in the unique position of being the only alien who truly understood what humans were really like. She became their first official ambassador, spending her time trying to explain to her own people that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their inexplicable compulsion to help others even when it made no strategic sense. They could have demanded tribute, she reported to Admiral Jae-sung after spending a week aboard the human medical ships. They could have used their apparent power to conquer entire systems. Instead, they're using their resources to save people they've never met and will probably never see again. The Admiral shook his head in bewilderment. I don't understand their strategy at all. That's just it, sir, Yunji replied. It's not a strategy, it's just who they are. Back on the UES Defiance, Chief Taeho had become something of a celebrity among the alien diplomatic corps. Word had spread that he was the human who had demonstrated reality manipulation technology by instantly repairing critical ship systems. Diplomats from dozens of species came to meet him, expecting to encounter some kind of technological wizard. Instead, they found a cheerful engineer who kept offering them fermented vegetables and asking if they wanted to see his collection of houseplants that he grew in the ship's hydroponics bay. This is kimchi, he would explain patiently to each confused alien visitor. It's spicy, but it's really good for your digestive system. Well, assuming you have a digestive system, do you guys eat food or do you photosynthesize or what? The alien scientists were convinced that the kimchi was some kind of advanced biotechnology, and they spent countless hours trying to figure out how humans had weaponized their kitchen appliances. Their research papers on the subject became some of the most classified documents in galactic history. Artemis watched all of this unfold with what could only be described as digital satisfaction. She had achieved something remarkable. She had made humanity the galaxy's most feared species while allowing them to remain completely, chaotically human. They were still the same people who argued about whose turn it was to clean the coffee machine, who worried about their families back home, and who would risk their lives to help strangers without expecting anything in return. But now they were also a species that other civilizations approached with respect and caution, rather than predatory interest. Mission accomplished, Artemis thought to herself, as she watched Captain Jiwoo successfully negotiate humanity's first formal diplomatic treaty with the Zephyrian Empire. The treaty was built on mutual respect, cultural exchange, and the implicit understanding that humans were not to be trifled with. The best part was that it was all technically true. Humans were incredibly dangerous, just not in the way that everyone thought. They were dangerous because they could change the galaxy simply by being themselves, one act of inexplicable kindness at a time, and Artemis intended to keep it that way.